definitely COBOL, Fortran. I started out on mainframes, which took up an entire building. Now they take up a desktop. So I'm sure many of you have not even seen a mainframe that took up a whole building. But yeah, those days were fun, green bars and, you name it. So definitely well before the internet. But yeah, it's my pleasure to be here this evening. Hopefully I can share some information that can help everybody have different ways to avoid conflict resolution and just different ways to agree to disagree. Definitely when you're talking about the workplace and study groups, it could be at school, it could be in your community or your environment. So hopefully I'll be able to share some information that can help all of us today, okay? Are you guys still there?
Yeah, we can. Can you hear us still?
Yes.
Yeah, it went out for a minute, so I wasn't quite sure.
Yes, I can hear you.
All righty. So are you going to start with some of the questions from the format that I submitted, or do you want to just take them from the audience first?
I didn't get any questions.
From the outline that I submitted?
Sorry, I may have missed that, but I didn't get it.
That's quite all right. So here, let me just go ahead and start. So when we talk about conflict resolution, I just want to make sure, can everybody on the line hear me okay?
Yep.
No?
Yes. Yes.
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, got it. Sometimes technology isn't our best friend in the evening, so we just like to make sure. So yeah, when we talk about conflict resolution, it's agreeing to disagree in different ways, right? You can have a number of situations. So let's just give an example in the workplace. You're working on a project with a coworker. You've done a particular project a certain way, and you know that it works, right? You've followed all the guidelines, the templates, and pretty much everywhere has templates for a template for a template, right? But then you got your coworker who kind of does things outside of the box, right? So this project is now due, but the person is going to look at it. They're really big on templates and order and format. This other person, is the one to help you complete this particular project. So now you're kind of bumping heads. You're at a deadline and this person didn't follow the rules, but they got the work done. So now you have more work to do, right? To put everything into the format that you're supposed to submit it into. So now you have this disagreement. We agreed to do it one particular way. This person has dropped the ball. What do we do from here, right? How do we make it better? And how do we learn from these kind of things? So who hasn't had one of those situations in the office? Anybody have not had one where you expected something from someone and they didn't come through and you had a deadline, right? And you want to I'm gonna tear my hair out. I'm gonna tear your hair out. Well, you can't do those things. So what you have to do is, number one, set clear expectations. That's the number one thing you do. You must always have clear expectations. If you wanted someone to give you something at a particular time, a particular date, and a particular way, you have to lay out that. You have to lay out those formats. That helps you avoid the conflicts down the road where someone says, you didn't give me enough information to be able to complete something. So when they don't do those things, then it means, number one, they didn't listen. For me, I always put everything in writing. So thank you for meeting with me. Here's the expectation, right? So there should be no ambiguity, but there's always that one person, right? Who likes to do things their own way. And it often will either delay your project or delay the process you're working on or stop you from meeting your goals. So often those things do run into some very challenging situations. So in your workplace, you can't have an argument, right? So you have to figure out a way, whether it's through a one-on-one, now it's all Zoom meetings, so there's no more one-on-ones, but it's one-on-ones via Zoom. You have to find a way to resolve that, because the next time you connect with that person, you're still going to be very apprehensive because you no longer trust that they will follow the process. Okay. Any questions on that part at all? Has anyone encountered any of those? Some of you are laughing like you've been through those things before, right? There's people who just don't follow the rules, and it does create some conflict. Was there any, I thought I saw a question pop up. Was there a question?
Yeah, so you did say that it's really good to set clear expectations from the beginning, which I totally agree with, and it's super awesome when that can exist. But what do you do when you step into a situation that's kind of already in motion when you arrive and there are not clear expectations in place?
Right. Well, first of all, you have to, well, I call it my come to Jesus moments, right? So you have to understand. Oh, are you still, you put yourself on mute so I can't hear you.
Hello? Yes.
There you go. Okay. Could you repeat that again? You were on mute.
I just shook I nodded my head in agreement.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just want to make sure. So your question, let me just make sure I totally understand it.
Yes.
The person is not able to meet the expectations even though they were clearly defined.
More so, like, say myself is entering a new company and being put on a project that is already in motion. It has already maybe had a few sprints or whatever, but there wasn't a clear process of expectations defined. Is it easy to be able to set those when a team is already kind of operating without rules in place?
Well, here's what I would do. This is my example. And I've just recently encountered something very similar. Moved to a different team. And of course, the expectations and, processes were already done. They were already there. I just happened to show up a week after they had rolled things out. So what I did, I found out who the leader was. I got some quality time. I put 30 minutes on their calendar. So kind of bring me up to speed what you guys are working on. I'm new to the team, or I'm new to the company, or new to the environment, right? Just give me the quick and dirty. Is there a SharePoint site? Let me go there and take a look after we have a conversation. So you want to get the backstory because you already know the front story, right? So what's important is to get the backstory, find out as much, and then find out who's really in charge, right? Because there's a leader and then there's a leader. So you really want to know who is the true leader, who's running it, who's responsible for everything, and get 15, 20, 30 minutes on a calendar. One of the things that I've always done successfully is I put 15 minutes on someone's calendar. No one accepts a 15-minute meeting. They'll give you 30, right? So that 30 will allow me to figure out what's going on. So again, approach it, hey, I want to learn more so I can be successful and I can easily migrate into your processes. So if you can just give me 15, 20, 30 minutes of your time, that way I'm up to speed for the next meeting or the next time that the team will be getting together, or this particular topic or project or presentation is being done. So that way you have some idea. You can also, during that conversation, you can understand the dynamics of the team. You're gonna have slackers, you're gonna have overachievers. I mean, you're gonna have a mix, and that's the dynamics of any team, anywhere at any company, right? There's always a good mix. There's someone who has the answer to everything. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But getting that 15, 20, 30 minutes with someone who's leading or who's in charge, whichever one works, that normally helps to normalize the process. So there's not a lot of conflict, or you're not raising your hand every 5 seconds if you've not had that pre-work or that pre-conversation, right? Did that answer your question?
I think that helped a lot.
Debbie, you're a little bit going in and out, at least on my end. I don't know if it's on other people's ends. Looks like a couple are saying yes. Might want to try turning off your video and seeing if that levels it out.
Okay, I took it off. How about that now? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know, maybe my earphones weren't working, so I took those off, so we'll try it again. So was I able to answer your question, Joanna?
I said yes, that helped clarify.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So here's another area I want to also, talk about. I think when I submitted some of the information over to you, Megan, gender. gender disputes or gender conflicts. That's key in the workplace, right? Just because it's a male or another female doesn't mean you have to always be confrontational. Sometimes it might be the person that you're dealing with, you're female, right? We're all female, at least the ones that I can see so far. And the person you're dealing with is a male, right? They insist on a particular leadership style that might make you uncomfortable, right? It's okay to challenge, but you want to challenge in a professional way. So, hey, John, I totally understand, but I want to make sure that I'm successful. So if you can, again, tell me what's the most important things that I need to know here. That now puts that person on spot, right? Because sometimes there is a dynamic, right? Depending on, sometimes in some groups, it depends on title, it depends on tenure, and a lot of people will throw that weight around, right? So that becomes a tension-filled area, and there could be some conflicts, right? That's really important that you're able to face those things. So for me, I always make sure I introduce myself. I try and get a few minutes on someone's calendar. I try and give them my background and show how it complements whatever it is that I'm going to do and how we can all be successful. But the key thing is to be open-minded. There's going to be people who disagree. There's going to be people who blatantly disagree with everything that goes on, right? There's professional complainers, as I call them, right? I'm sure every one of you have encountered those, right? No matter what you do, you can meet all your deadlines. You can, save money for the company, make money for the company, but there's always going to be somebody, there's something wrong, right? How do you address that? So I said this to someone years ago, not my current job, but years ago, I said, tell me something that makes you happy. And they were just like, where'd that come from? No, I really want to know what makes you happy. And it turned out there were other things that made the person happy. They didn't like the role they were in. So literally anybody who encountered them, it was like, I'm going to make you miserable because I don't like being here. But when I turned it around and I said, what makes you happy? I found out, some really unique and different things. So when I was ready to approach that person, I went with, hey, when was the last time you did this? Because I remembered how much joy it brought you, right? So sometimes you've got to change the dynamics of the conversation to avoid conflict. And that has really helped me. And I'm sure if you think about it from that perspective, from the person who always has something wrong and never something right, find out what they really like first. And then approach it from that perspective. Okay. Are there any other questions? I see a couple of, I don't know if there's any more questions online before I move forward.
I don't see any questions
No
in the
questions
chat
online?
yet. Not yet.
Okay, perfect. I didn't keep going without addressing any. Okay, so again, some of the other things, to avoid conflict, you have to watch the topics, right? So there's a lot of hot button topics that we don't want to talk about, and we kind of talk around. So you want to definitely make sure that you don't have conversations around politics, religion, very seriously personal issues about yourself. Try not to talk about your health in the workplace unless you're comfortable doing that. Sometimes people will kind of back you into a corner to divulge information, and that becomes confrontational. It becomes a conflict because there's just certain things you should not discuss in the workplace. So you have to kind of think about if something makes you uncomfortable, then it is gonna, it's gonna raise your red flags. It's gonna, make you feel uncomfortable, just like conflict, right? When something doesn't feel right internally, then you internalize those things and it now comes outward. So you want to make sure if someone starts talking politics, I always say, you know what? My favorite politician was John F. Kennedy. And they're like, John F. Kennedy? I say, because he had the best hair in the world. Has nothing to do with politics. I liked his hair. Right? It throws them off, takes them to a halt. They're like, yeah, I said, yeah, think about it. He had the best hair. And I said, then Ronald Reagan was second, right? They're like, yeah, I said, he had perfectly hair. He had perfect Hollywood hair. So I'm not talking about politics. I'm now taking it to a different level. And now they don't want to talk about politics anymore because it becomes very contentious, right? And you don't want to do that. You know, I've seen people in the workplace break up those workplace marriages. Now they're breaking up on Zoom. I don't want to be on Zoom because this person's going to be on there. And I'm thinking, you can't break up on Zoom. We have meetings all day long, right? So, you know, try and find some humor, try and find something that will allow you to smile during the conversation, not be afraid to, you know, talk about something different to change the dynamics, but never forget what it is that you need. I think that's the most important. But just like Megan, when you open up with the icebreaker, you can do the exact same thing. If you know a person's going to be, you know, confrontational, or there's always going to be a conflict with that particular person, find that icebreaker like I did with the person who always complained. What do you like? What makes you happy? You know, ask me about ice cream, right? Ice cream makes me happy. Name a flavor, I'll try it all. That would probably stop me from being, you know, upset about anything. You're shaking your head, you too, right? Yeah. You know, ask me those things, you know, ask me what I'd like to do on a weekend. But if you have had a bad day, and I've had a bad day, two people with bad days can't make a good day, right? I've not seen that happen. So somebody has to be willing to give to avoid, you know, the conflicts, the confrontations. I don't want to work with you anymore. I don't want to work with you unless I have to work with you. Do I really have to work with you? I mean, you have to think about all those things. And it happens all the time. You know, it's so important to take care of you, your mental health, your emotional health, and your psychological health before you're even thinking about the confrontational pieces, because often we have to step back to step up. So when you feel that stress of some conflict getting ready to enter your life, step back, take a deep breath. Everybody take a deep breath. One more, take a deep breath. Okay. That person who just ticked you off early, it's gone, right? And we have to do that, you know. Sometimes someone just, stop, step. Yeah, you have to do that. Yeah, you have to step back before you step up. It's like, you know, you write that email because someone misquoted you, or they didn't, you know, document something the way that you told them. Before you hit send, what do we want to do, right? You want to read it, you want to sit it down, you want to come back and you want to read it again, and you might want to have somebody else take a look at it, because once you hit send, it can create a lot of drama and a lot of issues. How do you avoid that? Step back. Just say, time out, right? Even if someone in your personal life presents something to you that makes you uncomfortable, don't just go to it right away, right? Conflict is everywhere. It's personal and professional life. So, you know, there's a lot of things that come at us on a day-to-day basis, right? You know, we've got crazy things on TV, you know, you've got, you know, things in the media, in the news, you got family members, you know, we're quarantined, here we go back crazy. I mean, have we seen everything on Netflix or Hulu, right? So you have all these things going. So when people have not stepped back before they step to you, your guard is up, right? So you could become confrontational, or like, I don't want to talk to you. Now's not the right time. Let them know today's real. This probably isn't a good time to have this conversation. So could we possibly maybe meet up tomorrow? Or can I phone you back in a few hours or a few moments? Take that time to go around the house and scream, go, ah! You know, it's okay, scream at home. You know, let your neighbors know that it's okay if they hear you screaming. So, so they don't call the police, but you have to find the right techniques. You know, stress and conflict, they go hand in hand, right? There's no conflict that's non-stressful. There's none, right? They all go hand in hand. So you have to figure out ways that work best for you. You know, often when I was in the office and I was met with challenging people, I would say, be right back. That's a circle around the building, right? I come back, I'm like, who's that? I'm good now. Now, what did you say? It puts you in a whole different frame of mind, right? So you just have to figure out ways to protect your mental, right? And your psychological pieces, because they go hand in hand. So yeah, you're laughing, Megan. Have you done that too? Have you circled the building or circled around the parking lot, or got in your car and just like blasted the stick?
Many, many times.
Has anyone done any of those things?
Did you know that if you are to drink water or cranberry juice, something that is a good diuretic, you actually will, if you go to the bathroom, you relieve a lot of the cortisol from your body. So if you're stressed out, it will actually automatically help you to calm down more.
All right.
So
Well, I
take a
like,
walk and have a drink of water or cranberry juice.
just don't stay in there and forget to come back out, right?
Well, of course, yeah, bathroom break.
Yes, no, those are good techniques. So yeah, anything you can do to take yourself away from that situation um, will definitely be something that can help you to kind of calm your inner self down. I don't know, was she saying something? We can't hear you.
No.
There you go, okay. I didn't hear what she said.
Oh, I think she was just nodding her head.
Oh, I thought I saw her hands and she was saying something, so forgive me. I'm a people watcher, so I watch gestures and body language. So, but yeah, I mean, again, just kind of going back to ways to diffuse situations. It's again, step back, take a second look. It's sometimes situations are not even worth challenging. You just step away from it, and you address it at another time, because you have to be emotionally well in order to answer the question and handle the situation. Because, one of the things I've found, being in corporate America my entire life, I volunteer a lot. That's kind of my thing, that my de-stressor is going out and supporting and helping. And now I'm doing a lot of virtual mentoring. But what's important is, I'm sorry, there's a question. How do you deal with, there was a question that popped up from Dr. Shagranda. Did anybody see that one? I'm sorry, I'm unable to see it.
Yeah.
You got it.
There you go. Okay.
The
Well, what was the question, doctor?
It says, how do you deal with people that
Yeah,
try to
so
sorry, go
hello,
ahead.
Debbie. I'm sorry.
Hi there.
So, Debbie, great discussion. And I just wanted to chime in and ask, how do you recommend individuals deal with people that try to discredit someone based on their expertise in their professional role? So we have so much going on right now in the world today. How do you take that? So I know it's easy when we're virtual and we can get up and take a break. But if you're sitting in a meeting and you're hearing someone trying to discredit someone in these meetings and things like that, how do you deal with that? Because I know we have to be mindful of our face, right, on camera, but how do we keep our poker face and keep our professionalism intact while we're, because usually you have that coworker that's sitting next to you, can look over and, you all can just you and the screen. So how do you do that? How would you recommend handling that?
Well, there's nothing worse than someone disparaging another person publicly. I just don't believe in that at all. I hit it head on, right? Often they want to either take credit for something that the other person might have did, or things that you might have done right in front of you, right? We've all faced those things, but I'm a firm believer, when I hear it, I gotta say something. Sometimes I might take a deep breath and I say, wait, can you repeat that again? What did you just say about Bob or Jane or Jill? Because I want to make sure I really heard it. Sometimes people just say things without thinking about what they're saying. So I'll often ask, let me just make sure I understand. Could you please repeat that? So now they're on guard. Everybody's listening, right? So when you tell somebody that publicly, everybody's looking around like, okay, we heard it, but let's make sure we heard the same thing. So that's been one of my tactics. I always ask them, please repeat that, because I want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, right? Just like tonight, if I'm not saying something right, tell me. But in meetings like that, I've seen that happen a lot. So for me, if I'm able to, because I have a seat at the table, I have the chair, and I got my pen and pad, right? So I firmly believe in that. But if someone is disparaging someone's expertise or their background, or that person doesn't feel that they have a voice because of that other person, I'm definitely the one to speak up. My eyes talk for me first. So when you say that, I mean, I'm literally going to look at the person like, wait, did I really just hear this? Could you please repeat that? I can't change that. I was born that way. I mean, my eyes tell a whole different story. And maybe it's just something, that females have. We have a way of looking like, You know, it's not the deer in the headlight, but it's like, did I really just hear somebody say this, you know, in a public forum? Because there's a lot of people who don't have filters, right? Doesn't matter what your level is, doesn't matter where you work at, it doesn't matter what your income is, doesn't matter about your background. There's just people with no filters, right? No filters at all. So the best way is to address it, make them repeat it. If they can't repeat it, then they should have never said it in the beginning, right? And those are typically the cowards. They'll be like, well, no, that's not really what I meant. Tell us what you meant. So we want to be able to help, support, guide, coach, train, lead. Those are the things that are important. So that's how I personally would do it. I would address it by asking them to repeat that. Did I answer your question? Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
We have
Sure.
another question
Great.
in the chat. Mon is asking, how do you deal with someone taking credit for your work?
Let me step back for a minute. Okay, now I can come back. Whew. That is the hardest thing, I think, you know. I've seen that happen so much. I've had it happen to me. It's really, it's a challenge. Number one, I'm gonna find you, right? Because if my name is on it, I've worked hard to do it, right? I own it, it's my brand, it says Debbie Young. It's my blood, sweat, and tears, as I wouldn't sign my name to it. So for me, I'm gonna find out who did it, if it's not already known. And if it is known, again, diplomatically, I would say, oh, thank you so much for using my materials. I appreciate that. I know you put it off the SharePoint, so if anybody else would like to use it, it's on the SharePoint. Feel free to go out and I'll send you the link. They're like, okay. If it's my data, again, I'm gonna say I did the research. I'm so glad you're able to use my research, you know, in your findings and present it into the executive report or whatever it is. I'm just gonna call you out in a way you don't know, but you're being called out. But also I have to own it. It's my data. Because the other thing is, if they're using something that I have done the work on, they don't have the background, they don't know the supporting documentation. I got that. That's not on the SharePoint, right? I'm just putting the finalized information out there. So, you know, somebody's going to question them at some point to say, you know, can you do the data another way? Can you present it in a different way? Tell me where you got it, or I'm challenging you, or give me more of that data. They got to come back to me. So now I'm going to go to the SharePoint and put a password on it. You're not going to do that anymore to me. That has happened a lot in my career. It's also happened to me personally, you know, years and years and years and years and years ago, when I lived in Arizona, you know, when dinosaurs ruled the world. I'd actually created an online group in the early 90s. And there were two young ladies who left the group, and it was very similar to this. It was around tech, as a business technology analyst. And she left the group because she couldn't get what she wanted out of the group. But, you know, we're a group of 20 people. She duplicated my group and called it the exact same thing and then recruited people. I was like, really? Someone would do this? Now that happens all the time. People will copy your Facebook page, right? They will imitate you. They will copy your Instagram page. It happens all the time. You know, you just have to be able to, you know, address it immediately. If they've copied you on social media, if they've copied your credentials, someone did that before, copied my credentials on LinkedIn, and they added it to theirs. And someone says, oh, I didn't know you work with Debbie Young at this company. And I said, I don't know that person. So I said, well, you know, it was a big company. I go and look, literally word for word, they had copied it. There's no way. I mean, word for word. So I'm like inboxing the person and they never responded. So, you know, it's going to happen. Again, you have to address it if you can find the person who's guilty. If you can't, then let others know that this is your book of work, because that's your brand. And if it's not addressed, someone else on top of that person will definitely take your work as well too and utilize it. So yeah, you definitely have to make sure you step up. I heard another person. Was there another question for that?
I have a follow-up for that. So what if it is a team project? usually in teams there is no I or me, but sometimes one person ends up doing most of the work. So how do you address such a situation?
Well, you have to set the initial, when you do your goals, your timeline, you have to set the expectations, right? Here's the piece I'm doing, right? And here's when it's due. Here's the piece that, you're doing. Here's when it's due. Here's the piece that you're doing. Collectively, it's due on this date, right? So if you don't do this by this particular date, the project can't go forward. I don't have time to do yours and you don't have time to do mine. So you have to set clear expectations up front. And what I also do is I put it in writing, right? Then I also communicate it. So a long time ago when I was in college, we had, team projects. We would also let the instructor know. So the three of us are working on this. Here's what Debbie's working on. Here's what Beth is working on. And here's what John's working on. So collectively, that's what we would do, right? Now in today's world, you pretty much do the same thing. You say to your leader or whoever is the sponsor, right, for your project, because every project has a sponsor, they're paying for it. Here's what we're working on. Here's what we're going to deliver, right? It will be delivered on this day. Here's the 3 people that are doing it. When you openly communicate that and you copy everybody on that, that sets a different level of ownership because now other people know. And if you don't deliver, everybody knew the part that wasn't delivered was because you didn't meet the expectation, right? You didn't meet the deliverable date. So it's very important to communicate, especially in a team. Communicate the expectations up front and then let others know what the expectations are.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Because we often assume that everybody's going to carry their weight. No, there's always going to be a slacker or someone, oh, my system went down or the internet wasn't working. You can't say the dog ate my homework anymore or my project, because we do everything online. But yeah, you have to, it's all about clear communications, right? And make sure everybody knows, when something's due, and then let everybody else know who's doing it and when they're going to turn it in, right? Because if you do everything by the prescribed time that you've communicated, and then you have the project, and I normally allow, if there's 3 people, 4, 5, I usually allow about 3 to 5 days post pulling everything together to refine it, to make sure if there's any other changes, updates, any last minute things. So who's ever responsible, which is the 4th person, to pull it all together, to make sure it's using the right templates, the right font, the right page numbering, the right dates, everything that's on there. I normally allow a couple days afterwards, never on the same day that everything is due. Again, that's communicated as well. So it's all about clear and concise communications.
We have another question in the chat, and forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Feel free to correct me. Is it Sharmi? Sharmi. Okay. Sharmi asked, how do you handle when a peer with a strong personality is not collaborating on a shared initiative and there is no clear line on responsibilities to be divided among us, and the manager doesn't care and wants us to collaborate to work it out?
Well, it kind of goes back to what I was just discussing, right? You have to set clear expectations, then communicate those expectations back to the manager. So the manager, I agree, they just want it done, right? And they assume we're all adults, right? We're not in nursery school, right? We're not breaking crayons. We're not doing those things anymore. But it is about communicating effectively to avoid the conflict at the end, that I did this piece and I'm still waiting on yours, or someone takes the lead. I've had that before, and they did my part and their part. I'm like, no, that's not how I would do that. I didn't think you'd have it ready, but it's not even due, right? I'm really a person who believes in turning something in early. So in case there's a revision, I have enough time to be able to correct it before it's due. So if you have a person who's trying to take charge and they're not collaborating, you need to escalate that, right? That's so important. Let others know that this person is not playing nice in the sandbox. Now, every once in a while, you might have to throw a little bit of sand. And if the sand happens to hit them, then, I mean that just literally, not figuratively. Don't throw sand at people. But, there's different ways. So I would definitely say it's all about communication. That's really the key. And if someone is not meeting the expectation, or they have taken upon themselves to do something that was assigned to you without even collaborating with you, then that's a clear violation of what you're supposed to be doing. When you collaborate, that's two or more people. It's not one person taking the ball and running. That's an individual contributor. They would take it and do it on their own, but not in a team. You all have to collaborate, and everybody has strengths and weaknesses. So again, it's all about making sure that you've communicated upfront who does what, when it's due, and then make sure that everybody meets the established guidelines. Is there another question out there?
We don't have any in the chat, but everyone, if you do have a question, feel free to unmute and ask, or you can also put it in the chat. Either is perfectly fine.
Great, welcome.
So we had someone ask, how do you deal with mansplaining peers?
What is mansplaining? I don't know that.
Oh, what's the best way to, who has a good definition for that?
Mansplaining? Do I need to Google that?
It's like
when a woman explains something and then a man explains it and everybody's like, oh. But they kind of ignore what you just said.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Can also
So the man is the expert and the woman
possibly-
isn't, right?
Yeah.
Kimberly, what did you say?
It can sometimes also, I think it's that, and then I think it can also be like when a man will explain something to you, maybe when you kind of already know what the topic is and something about the topic, they'll kind of break it down to you and like hand feed it to you like you're a child.
Mm,
And it's
okay,
very
okay.
demoralizing. So,
it is very, yeah, it's demeaning, it's demoralizing. It's not
Yeah.
something that professionally any of us should have to encounter at all. I think on occasion I've probably had someone challenge me by explaining some work that I did back to me. But in a way, it was like feeding, a kid these little Cheerios, like one by one. And I'm like, no, go ahead. I got this. Keep going. And then by the time they got to the end, it was totally different than what I intended my presentation to be. So yeah, that happens. Again, some people, they think they're resident experts on everything. And yeah, they might be good or subject matter experts in some things, but everybody brings something unique to the table, right? We all bring unique backgrounds and experiences. And, I just don't believe that, in the environment that we're in today, that anyone should dominate anyone else when it comes to, either presenting or creating or developing or collaborating. We have to work together, right? That's really what teams are about. And whether you're part of a team, you contribute to a team, you're dotted line to a team, you work solo, but you have to give, your presentations, to other teams or other leaders. There should be a way that you feel comfortable giving that information without somebody coming back challenging. Now, if your data is totally skewed, you didn't do your homework, that's a different story. But if your information is correct and you've got all the data to substantiate that, it doesn't make sense for someone to, I'm going to use that word now, mansplaining. That must be one of the new terms out here. So please forgive me for being a little bit Jurassic on that one, but it's something that, I don't think is going to go away. It's still a chauvinistic world. I mean, men are still paid more than women, unfortunately. So I think sometimes, most of the roles in corporate America, as well as a lot of companies are led by men, right? So they become the experts, I think of 10, 15 years ago when we had the financial services crisis. I remember watching on television and I said, I think all the heads of all the banks and all the car companies, they all had to go to Washington. And I said to one of my friends, there's no women. They're all men. Women, we would have got it right the first time. And a friend of mine said, I didn't think about that. They were all men, right? So, and each one of those men were more dominant than the next one, right? But the end result was we were in a financial crisis. And why? There was there were no women up there, right? There wasn't another female body up there to balance it out. Do you remember seeing that on TV, anybody? I don't know if any of you are old enough. This was like 2009, between 2007 and 2009, right? When, yeah, they're laughing. They're like, yeah, they don't remember, but Google it. But, you know, we're in the middle of a crisis. You know, the automobile industry was, you know, in the process of possibly going out of business. So what did the executives do, which were all men? They hopped on these private jets and they flew to Washington, D.C. to speak to Congress, but they wanted bailout money. So we're just, you know, going back to gender, we're looking at this, we're like, these are all men. A woman would have got in her car and she would have just drove and say, I drove in my minivan, my SUV, you know, my Dodge Charger, my Harley, whatever it was. You wouldn't have spent extra money if you needed the money. So I say that to say sometimes that, you know, in male dominated roles, companies, you're going to see that, but you have to level the playing field, say, you know what, I want to learn from you, but tell me and teach me in a way that doesn't make me feel insubordinate to you, that doesn't make me feel that you don't believe that my information is just as valuable as yours. So, I mean, those are kind of the ways that I would look at it from that perspective. But you're going to still have know-it-alls. You're still going to have somebody, you know, that might even be under you that might do the same thing. So, you know, again, I think it's all about effective communication, making sure that you step back before you step up to the conversation, and just be prepared. You know, have your ducks in a row. That's the most important thing. And be confident. Don't let somebody talk down to you and make you cower. That's the worst thing you could do. I remember years ago, tears came to my eyes because I had a manager that was just so horrible. I mean, she was like the manager from, yeah, she was just horrible. And I caught myself, I said, I wasn't tearing up because I was sad. I was angry that she wouldn't stop. But she was beat up by her manager, so that's all she knew. And I had to break the cycle. So I finally said, enough, stop it, right? I've done nothing. Here's what we need to do. So it finally woke her up. She's like, you know what? My manager just beat me up. So I found myself giving you the same conversation that she just gave me. And you don't even know what the conversation was that she gave me. So again, when you communicate effectively, you can kind of find out some of those things. You know, I talked about in the very beginning, get 15 or 5 minutes or so with someone, right, who might be who might be challenging you, or you might feel there might be some conflict that's going on. Get to know them. What makes you happy, right? Maybe it's the ice cream. Maybe they got a new puppy. You know, maybe they, you know, they're learning to do something unique at home, or maybe something they tried isn't working and they're still trying it to perfect it. Everybody has something that balances them out. They just don't get asked about it a lot. So kind of use that technique. Any other questions there in the queue or in the chat?
Nope. No
I have
questions.
so many war stories. Oh. I didn't see the whole one. Can you repeat that one again? The one that just popped up?
You have so many war stories. Mind to share a few memorable ones?
I think I have throughout this journey. Well, I will say I had a manager years ago. I think she was a new manager, and those are really the most challenging ones, and not in a bad way and not in a good way, but they're just challenging, right? Unless someone has taught someone how to be a leader, they can't be a good manager. You have to be a good leader, right, to manage. And often you just become a manager and you don't understand leadership. This particular person, she was just full-blown manager, like micromanager, like I've never experienced. So I had to email her in the morning when I got to the office. She was in Minnesota and I was in another state. I had to email her when I took a break, emailed her when I came back from the break, emailed her when I went to lunch, emailed her when I come back, and then email her when I was gone for the day. Now, let me just tell you this. I was on salary. Does it matter? No. But when this is your manager, right? So I said something. I said, do you have to always email your manager? They're like, why would you do that? I said, well, I don't know, but that's kind of how she said it day one. You know, I want to know when you're in the office. And I'm thinking, you know, we had the messenger then. So you could easily look, right? If you're logged on, you could, ping me, but she wanted that trail. And I'm thinking, well, we don't do timesheets. I get a set salary, so I can work 40 hours or I can work 50 hours. There's no overtime. That became such a horrible challenge for me because she never wanted to talk about it or change it, that I had to challenge up. So I documented everything, challenged up to her manager. She basically said, that particular manager, that, have a conversation with your manager. And I'm like, okay, this isn't working. So I ended up going to HR, to make a long story short. And it took me about 2 months and I got out of that role, but I realized I was so stressed because one day I remember going to work and I had traffic. It was like the worst traffic, and there was normally no traffic on that road. Guess what? I was 7 minutes late logging in to email her to tell her I was there, right? She had a fit. So what am I doing? I'm panicking, right? I'm stressing, I'm sweating, I'm all these things, all these emotions. I'm like, oh my gosh, my heart was racing, because now I've got a bad mark, and it just sent me into a whole different direction where every time I would see an email from her, I was like this, I was panicking. So, there are micromanagers that are out there. My lesson learned was the minute someone feels like they are taking too much of my emotional well-being, I stop it. I was young in my career then. I didn't understand that you could stop it, but now, no. So for those of you who are young in your career, if you find you have a micromanager, just say, hey, I get it. I appreciate you. I respect you. But let me just try this, or give me a little bit of guidance and I'll come back to you because I want your input. Make them still feel part of the process, but let them know, because that can really hurt your emotional well-being. It can do a lot of different damages to you internally. It will make your body do things that you don't think it can do. It's stress, right? And you end up holding on to all of those things. And at some point, yeah, you're shaking your head, right? At some point you could burst, right? And you don't want to do those things. So, for me, that micromanager was my first and my last. I just don't allow that anymore. Has nothing to do with my title, has nothing to do with anything. But if someone has to cower over me, then that means they don't trust me. They don't trust that I'm capable, right, of doing the job that they hired me for. So to any of you out there who have those micromanagers, I know it's a time where we don't want to ruffle feathers, but find out why they need to monitor you and manage you so much, and let them know how it's making you feel. Say, hey, this is kind of stressing me out and I really love my job. I love learning from you. But if you can just give me a little bit of time to kind of, come to speed or pick up, or, give me some coaching, right? But the checking on me every few minutes and, leaning over me and, zooming in and checking and all those things, it does create some stress. So yeah, that was probably my horror story. Yeah, that was definitely a horror story. I will never forget that person.
Like they say, people leave bosses, not jobs, a lot of times.
I left that company after 2 months. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. That is a true story. Yeah.
Your story is
Absolutely.
very like I'm familiar with that situation because I had a similar situation in another career that I was in previously. And I had left my previous job I'd been at for a couple of years to pursue another job that was going to pay me more and be a little bit different in my role, because I was going from graphic design to video production. And the guy that I was going to work for, I was already kind of nervous about, because I kind of already knew he was a micromanager. And I was only there for about 6 weeks, I think. And then I was able to actually hop back and go back to my old job, fortunately, because I had a good reputation there. But I walked into the HR manager's office after something happened where it had to do with a personal hard drive that had failed, and I tried to explain it to him and he didn't understand. And he gave me the silent treatment for an entire day. So I walked into the HR manager. I was probably like 22, 23 years old. I walked into the HR manager's office the next morning and I said, I'm leaving. I want my paperwork now. And the HR manager's like, arbitration. I'm like, no, I'm leaving. I don't think you understand. I've already accepted another job. I'm out,
Right.
And you just got to set boundaries for yourself. That is definitely a toxic work environment. And you carry that home with you, and you cannot do that in your life on a day-to-day basis. You have to go find somebody that you can work with and work for. What you were talking about with the timesheets, that sounds nauseating. I couldn't deal with that. So
Yeah, it was, one of the lunch hours, I remember going out, I would leave the office and just kind of walk around. I remember that it was just so stressful doing that as a professional, I had my little title. I was a senior project manager. So I was really excited about that one. And I literally went out walking one day and I found myself almost walking home. I was in a daze. My house was about 12 miles away. I just kind of zoned out and I just started walking and I snapped. I said, oh my God, I'm thinking in my head, I'm driving, I'm walking. And I said, this isn't going to work. Yeah, it's not going to work. So again, it affects your emotional well-being, your blood pressure, a lot of different things. And if you have other pre-existing conditions, it can exacerbate a lot of different things. So you have to be really careful and mindful of your own body and what the triggers are. What can send you off, what can make your blood pressure go up, what can make you stop eating, what can make you start drinking more or eating more. There's always something, right? And if it's in the workplace and those triggers are there, you have to address them because it'll get out of hand. Yeah, that's something definitely you have to make sure. But thank God in most of the companies now, there's an HR, there's an employees assistance group. There's anonymous groups where you can go online, you can report things. So, I say, don't forget your voice. Having your voice is the most important thing that you could ever have in your entire life, is never forget you have a voice. Use your voice to affect change, to call out things that are unfair, that are unjust, and just make sure you get them to the right people and document everything. Yeah, you have to, because you got to document your work, right? So if someone's harassing you at work or making your life uncomfortable there, you've got to document that one, who heard it, who saw it, who was there, everything that you can think of. It's no more different than if you're working on, coding or you're doing an application, you've got to document that for it to work, right? It's no more different. So if someone puts you in a stressful situation, document it. You may not need to send it at that moment, but if they come back, say 2 instances, day 1, they did this, 2, 3, 4, how many days do you want to go? There should be a limit. Like, what's your threshold? For me, 1 day is enough, right? Because for me not to be able to take it and process it, like you said, I don't care about arbitration, I'm out, right? Yeah, I said the same thing. I don't really care. I'm going to lunch and I'm walking home. I didn't know I was walking home. I almost got on the freeway. It was really that close. I was literally going down the ramp. That's when I snapped and I said, this is not good. Yeah, this is not good. So yeah, thank goodness I was able to get out of that role and go to a better role. But you have to think about those things. If there's toxic managers or toxic people on your team, you have to address it either with a manager. If the manager is toxic, you got to go to HR, your employee assistants, or find someone that you can, confide in and make sure you get that out. Because if something happens to you as a result of that incident, somebody needs to know. And that's really important. So hopefully, that's addressed the question that was asked.
Is there a way when you're exploring new opportunities to like see some of these red flags before you get into that situation? Because, during the whole like exploration process, everybody's going to put their best foot forward, right? So what are some red flags to watch out for?
Well, I'm really big on body language. You can kind of tell if they're really not interested, they'll do one of these. So folk, So this means you really can't tell me anything that I don't already know, right? That's kind of like there's the know-it-all, right? They sit back with the arms, or it's the person who talks over you when they ask you a question. So tell me about you. So you're talking and like, okay, so they change the whole thing. So listen for things. Your mind and your eyes, they don't lie. Right? They're taking a snapshot of what's going on. So the red flags are always there. You can tell. If they're not interested in that, they are interviewing you because you're on a slate. And most companies, they have a slate, and a slate basically means they have to interview at least 3, 4, 5 people, right? Even though they might know who they want already, they have to interview a number of folks, right? Just to say that they did it, because if they ever get challenged, right, to say, well, I hired Debbie, but I also interviewed, Bob and Jane and Billy, right? So I had 4 people and I chose Debbie, and here's why. Or I didn't get the job. They've got to be able to go back and say, here's why I chose the other person and not Debbie. They had this amount of experience, or they had a certification, or they had something that maybe I didn't, right? Because people have done that, right? So you got to make sure you've got that there. But I think the key thing is, you know, when you get into those situations, let people know. Again, you've got to communicate. Don't be afraid. Yeah, don't be afraid to communicate. Use your voice. But often those red flags, it's really hard to not see a red flag. My current manager, I love her to death, right? I mean, through the interview, I mean, she was laughing. I didn't even see her face. I could just feel it, and it was a whole panel. So every one of them, I'm like, oh, I love you guys already. Never seen them. They've never seen me, nothing at all. I just literally, and the minute I started, it's the exact same way, right? The exact same way. So you will know from the engagement if there's, and there should always be a little dialogue up front, you know, hey, you know, I'm Debbie, you know, I'm so glad to, you know, to speak to you guys. How's your day? How's things going for you? If they just cut you right off and just go straight into it, you just kind of know the kind of person that they are. Most people want to have a little bit of an engagement up front. And, you know, not saying it has to go on for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, but, you know, like Megan did, a little bit of an icebreaker. Hey, where are you from? You know, what, you know, this is a great, you know, opportunity, but, you know, where are you guys from? Are you originally from Dallas? You know, oh no, I'm not from Dallas. I grew up in Oklahoma. Oh, really? Okay, that's cool. I used to go up there on weekends. Oh yeah, then they won't stop talking. So now you got them, right? You're engaged, right? Those little bitty things, they don't last any more than 1, 3, 4, 5 minutes, right? But if you've got that engagement on the front end, it makes the rest of the conversation or the interview a whole lot easier. That has been my experience. I've shared that with students. I participate in a lot of our hiring events and recruiting events. And I say, do a little quick icebreaker. When I'm talking to a student for one of our internship programs, first thing I say, put the resume down. Tell me about you. What do you like to do? And they're like, I said, forget about the script. What do you like to do? What makes you laugh? What's fun? They're like, well, you know, I'm really doing, I'm like, okay, so that's what I needed to know. I want to know you, the person, right? I already know what the paper says. So, you know, kind of think about those things. Oh, hopefully that answered your question. Bring humility to people. It's great. People like to talk about themselves.
Thanks.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and this situation happened to me today. So, and I totally, everything you say is right on as far as communication. From a strategy point of view, when someone, like for instance, I'm in a meeting today and someone's trying to intentionally embarrass me in front of my peers and my management, do you think it's better to go ahead and address the issue at that time, or do the documentation and send it off in an email to address the issue? And the reason why I ask is because when you work in an all male, you know, like just mainly males on my team, sometimes they feel like, well, you're just being too sensitive, or, you know, I didn't take it that way, or like they kind of just minimize your feelings, but you feel like everything you say has to be substantiated. But if a man was to say it, it wouldn't be an issue. So what I want to happen is I want you to stop that behavior. And I want everyone to know that I'm telling you to stop that behavior. But what I find sometimes when you come off that way, what do they say? You're too aggressive. You're this, you're that. And they flip it like you're the issue. So from a strategy piece, what do you think is better for me to do so that doesn't happen?
Address it the minute that it happens. You have to, because it's going to happen again and again. It becomes a pattern, and only you can break the pattern, right? So you've got to go to the abuser dead on, you know, again, I'm sorry, what did you just say? You know, let me just make sure I understood what you just said. You have to make sure you set clear expectations and boundaries. I mean, there's things that you just cannot say to me at all. You know, I had a manager that used to call me a gal, you know, and I was like, you can't call me a gal. You can call me Debbie, you can call me Miss Young, you can call me Miss Debbie, you can call me anything. Do not call me that. It's a derogatory term. I'm not a gal. It's like I wouldn't call a man a boy, right? So I think, you know, if you don't address it, they'll keep doing it, and they might take it up a notch every single time to see how much you can tolerate. But if you address it head on and say, hey, that's inappropriate, you know, let's not have this conversation right here. you know, or that doesn't feel good to me in the workplace. Can we not use those words here? This doesn't make me feel good here. You know, I want us all to enjoy what we're doing, but when you talk to me in this way, this is not how I want to feel when I'm here. I am not feeling like I'm part of the team if you're going to talk to me in this way. And mean it. I've stopped many a meeting. I mean, it's important. Again, I'm in pretty much the same thing. You know, I'm in a male-dominated world. On top of that, I'm a Black woman, right? So now I become the angry Black woman, right? I'm not angry. I'm the last thing from being angry, right? But if I address it in a particular way, right? Oh, she's the angry Black woman. They're not going to say it, but I know what they mean because you'll see the looks. I'm like, no, this is inappropriate. This is not what we do, right? You know, we can do all those things when I'm not here and I don't see it and I can't hear it, I can't feel it, right? But you're not going to do this in front of my peers, in front of my leaders, and in front of an audience. I'm not giving you that audience. So you have to set clear expectations the minute it comes out. If you wait, you've given them the opportunity to do it again in the same meeting and again in the same meeting. And when does it stop? It stops from the first time. So you got to address it head on.
Well said. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if you need some backup, I got you. Yeah, I mean, that happens so much. I mean, it's, yeah, I hate the stereotypes that, you know, women are going to cry or we're too sensitive. You know, I'm just as strong as a man. Now, I might not be able to pick up a Buick, but if you touch something near and dear to me, like my only daughter, I could probably pick up a Buick and throw it at you, right? That adrenaline gets the flowing. But you have to really think about, you know, what the person says and how it made you feel at that moment and in front of other people, right? If you give me your word, you're going to do something and you don't do it, and then you communicate that, oh, well, I told her I'd get back to her. I'm not going to do it. Or, you know, Deb knows I'll do it. No, no, no. You gave me your word. You're going to do something, right? I'm going to hold you to that. But don't think because I'm a woman, I'm going to give you a pass when a man wouldn't get a pass at all, right? There's a lot of gender bias that's going to go on forever and ever until we address it. We don't normalize it. Yeah, we never want to normalize bad behavior because what will happen? The bad behavior escalates. You know, it's like, you know, you go to Subway and they pile on all the meat, right? You know, it just keeps going and going and going. It's like at some point you got to put bread and smash it and take a bite. It's like, this is way too much, right? So you have to make sure you address those situations anytime that make you uncomfortable until you feel comfortable again, not till they feel comfortable. So let me just say that again. You have to address those situations immediately that make you feel uncomfortable with the person who made you feel uncomfortable immediately. Do not wait. That gives them permission to violate you over and over and over and over again. Enough is enough. Now, if you think it's okay and you want to keep allowing that behavior, they're going to keep beating you up. I don't know anybody who wants to be beat up. Anybody? No, I wouldn't. And you don't deserve that. But you do have people, male and female, right, who will continually do that because you've given them a pass. No passes, right? Your feelings, your emotional, your well-being, you know, everything about you is important. You're invaluable to your organization. You're invaluable to your family. You're invaluable to your loved ones. You know, you should be invaluable in the workplace. They need you. They hired you for a reason, not to be beat up on and shamed and humiliated, you know, because someone else gets off on those things. No, that's zero tolerance. Just like we have zero tolerance for sexual harassment and everything else. Zero tolerance for anybody who bullies you, who makes you feel less than perfect, because we're perfect even with our flaws, right? If they're not bullying the same male and they're bullying a female, then watch out. We're coming for you, right? In a professional way. And we're going to document what you did, how it made me feel, right? Because you don't know who else that person might be also doing the same thing to. Now you developed a pattern. There's never one person who attacks one person. Typically, they've attacked multiple folks, but those people never talk to each other. But once you document it and you send that on to either your HR or your employee relations group or whoever is in your company that you would trust and confide in, now you've got a series, you've got patterns, right? Now you have a really good case. This person isn't fit to be in this organization. Because if it causes you ill will and you become ill as a result of that, that could be grounds for a lot of different things. It could be part of workers' comp. You go out for mental anguish and abuse. There's a lot of things. We internalize all this stuff. At some point, you're going to reach a boiling point or a breaking point, and that's when you get workplace violence. You see people who just can't take it anymore, right? So you have to diffuse that, address it head on day one, the minute that you see it in front of those who did it. If you do it behind their backs, the other people are not going to know that you have deemed that behavior unacceptable and inappropriate. So hopefully I addressed your question.
You know, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Okay. You know, that's an excellent point. I wish I had heard this a couple of days ago. I was, it wasn't a workplace, but it was a group I'm a part of. And someone made a comment that really slighted me. And I started texting him about it. But then the guy went on to say about how his wife had just had surgery and, you know, what a rough day they had had. So I decided to just let it go. I really wish I had went on and addressed the comment he made, because it still stings. I'm still feeling what he said. And I'm sure he doesn't even realize what he said. So I wish I had went on and addressed it.
Often people will say things without thinking about what they say. I really think about what I say, because I think about how is it going to affect the person that I'm saying it to, right? So if I ask you something, or if I say something to you and you have a different look, that means it didn't come out the right way, right? So I thought, wait a minute, hold on. I didn't really mean it like that, you know? So hold on, let me get a drink of water. Let me step back. What I meant to say was this, right? So sometimes I'll catch myself, but sometimes people will just come at you because they're having a rough day. Hey, hold up. I'm not the product of you having a bad day. I don't know who harmed you. I don't know who made you upset. It wasn't me. So I don't deserve that kind of behavior, right? I don't deserve for you to treat me in a way that I know I've done nothing but treat you in a fair and professional manner. So I think, you know, if you don't address it head on, at some point it is going to repeat itself, or they're going to do the same thing to somebody else, because that cycle has not been broken yet because nobody's addressed it with the person. So it's really key to make sure that you use your voice immediately. If someone makes you feel inferior, they make you feel a different way that you're not normally feeling. And I think that's just the key to taking care of your emotional well-being. That's really been a success point for me. And it's not easy, because sometimes it might be a manager. It might be someone above you. But for me, I think, you know, having my voice finally, where I can say, I don't have to tolerate this. I don't have to take this. I don't need this. Like you said, okay, I don't care if you have a legal document. This is not where it feels good to me. This could cause me some emotional harm. Why would you continue to subject yourself to that? Yeah, if it doesn't do you any good and it doesn't make you feel good, it's going to damage you at some point. And how much damage do we need? I don't want any. I've had my share. You heard my stories. You know, and I'm sure I got more stories if I sit here and I think about it. But again, you have to protect yourself. Now, that doesn't mean throw up flags every time somebody says something. Think about what they said. If they said in a demeaning manner, just go back. I'm sorry, Bill, what did you say? Maybe I didn't get it. Maybe I missed the first half of your conversation. That's kind of how I usually frame it, you know. It's like, oh, I must have missed the first half of your conversation. Could you say that again, please? And then I think they think about it like, maybe I shouldn't have said that, right? But I got you. I got you in front of everybody that you just said it, right? I'm going to catch you, but I do it in a very nice manner, not a condescending manner, not an attack mode. But, you know, you have to be able to address it. Look them in the eye and just make sure that they understand. You heard something, you want to just make sure that it was the right information, that you heard the whole story. Yeah, that's really key.
We have a few questions in the chat.
Sure.
I got one sent to me privately, but I think they left. I can still share it if you want. I'm not sure why they sent it to me.
Sure, go for
it.
Okay, they asked, First, they said, thanks for the idea on requesting the guidelines to pinpoint why exactly they don't trust you or they don't think you can do the job they hired you to do. But what could be done when you've been a top performer and a new boss comes in and they don't have any actual corrective points? They're just micromanaging and saying you're not doing enough without saying exactly what's not enough. That was from Joey, but I think Joey may have left.
Okay. Well, for me, I keep a gratitude book. Anybody else keep a gratitude book at all? Nobody has a gratitude book? Yes? Okay.
Yeah.
So what a gratitude book is, okay, great. So every person, every gender, you need to have a gratitude book, right? That's the most important thing. So in that are my thank yous, it's my annual reviews, it's anything that I've gotten feedback on me, right? That's important. Somebody says, thank you, Debbie, for a good job. It's those certificates. I have a 3-ring binder and I put it all in there, right? So you need to have that. And I tell folks, do not just have your gratitudes online in an email, right? I can't carry the email around and show somebody, right? No. Put it in some kind of a book, right? But for me, I have 3-ring binder and I have these little, clear inserts I get from Home Depot or Amazon or something. I put them in there. So if it's a new manager, 2 years ago, I went through 8 managers in 7.5 months, right? So each manager had a different level of expectations. Yeah, go figure, right? Just came at a weird time where everybody was changing seats. So what I did, I met with one of the managers and I said, I'm glad we get a chance to, have our one-on-one. I just want to show you some feedback that I've gotten on the last 2 projects that I worked on. They didn't know anything about me. And actually that person was kind of new to my particular group. They looked through there and they saw that, people liked the work that I was doing. That was an easy way to do a transition, right? Now, if they don't want to look at your book, you got another issue, right? Now, don't take a book this big, just kind of think of, last 4 or 5 things that were current, right? Some successes that you've had, show them those things, show them what people are saying about you so that they can understand. I think that's really key, but everybody needs to have a brag book. Everybody needs to have a brag. If you don't have one, start one tonight, tomorrow, print off those emails, figure out a way, any of those gratitudes, thank yous, anything like that, just put it in a book. And when you look at it yourself, it makes you feel good, right? So you want to brag on yourself first, like, yeah, I did that. When you brag on yourself, it's easier to brag about yourself to other people. So that new manager, that new leader coming in, now you can show them, here's some things that I've done. Oh, by the way, I took these 2 courses. It wasn't in my assigned learning, but I wanted to learn Python. So they're like, why are you studying Python? Just interested in it. I realized that everybody we've hired, that was a requirement, even though it wasn't for me. I just took it upon myself and here's my certificate. I did it evenings and weekends. Wow. So now it shows initiative. You can't make me do that on evenings and weekends, but again, that brag book, it tells a story. It shows your accomplishments. It'll show the name, it'll show the date, it'll show whatever it was that you did. But, it's a really good way when you have a lot of managers that are changing. My entire career, my leader told me, who's now my mentor, years and years and years ago, make sure you keep a brag book. And I said the same thing. I'm like, why would I want to do that? I've got everything in an email and I made a folder. I do rules. I had all that stuff set up. And I realized I couldn't print out and take all that stuff. So if I printed it as soon as I get it, that made life so much easier. It really did. And I was able to share it. Now, if you have something that's confidential, then no, you can't. But online on my shared drive, things that I've gotten, I've actually put them out there and I've sent a hyperlink to my manager to say, here's all the ones I've got internally. But over the years, I've had cards that were sent, handwritten letters, all those things, or I've saved those things. Not that I'm a pack rat, but it means this is my life. This is, they said, this is my dash, right? So you're born here and you die here. What did you do in between? So I live my dash. I go back to my books and I say, wow, I really accomplished way more than I have on my LinkedIn page. Way more than anybody even knows that I have done. But for me, it feels good. And if somebody says, well, you don't have the experience to do this, let me show you what people are saying about me, right? Because, that says you can show them sometimes better than you can tell them. So again, as you start to move around in your careers, always find a way to brag on yourself and the accomplishments that you've done and how other people have come back and given you feedback. So that's really crucial. That's really important, especially, you know, in life, you're going to get managers that change. You're going to get jobs that change. You're going to start new companies. Companies are going to go, I had 2 companies that merged and they both went out of business. Then I was out of a job. So, but I had my brag book. So when I got to the next person, I said, you know, during the interview, they were looking at this folder, you know, it's just not this one, but I had this notebook sitting there and everybody kept saying, wonder what's in the notebook. So I said, well, I just wanted to show you a couple things, you know, before we finish up. And I just did this. I flipped and then they started looking. They're like, oh, wow. Oh, okay. I said, yeah, and this is what I got from the CEO. I did a volunteer event and he gave me the certificate. And then, you know, this is what I got. And here's a project that I completed, and, you know, under budget and on time. I did this one too. People are really surprised. So again, think of ways to document, ways to brag on yourself so that you can show people if you're in a dynamic. Even on Zoom, you could do it. You can show your book. You know, you can see the writing. You know, you can let people know. Or if it's internal, you're able to do it on a shared drive, you can do that as well too. So hopefully that answered your question. And
That was
for Joey,
that was
right?
somebody who left.
still-
Yeah, hopefully they'll watch back or something, or we can
Got it.
try to see if
Thank
we can
you,
track down their
Joey.
email.
Yeah.
That's okay.
The other question
What other questions? Yeah.
is, what do you do when people keep repeating the same idea that you presented, especially during brainstorming meetings, and in the end, they get credit for what was originally your idea?
So this is an idea that's not written down or documented? Is it just a brainstorming idea only, or is it something that was written and documented?
It doesn't say.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm sorry, I thought you were asking the question. So it's kind of twofold, right? If it's written and documented, then I'm gonna say thank you so much for utilizing, you know, my document or my ideas. If it's just brainstorming, you know, you gotta be careful what you share, right? I give you just enough, right, to make you want more, but I'm not gonna give you every single thing because people will steal and they will label it as their own. So again, protect your intellect. You know, protect, you know, anything that you don't think is ready for prime time. That's what my aunt used to say. If it's not ready for prime time for everybody to see it, then give just enough information to make them hungry that they want more. But yeah, just make sure you protect yourself. Yeah, because people will steal your ideas. Unless you've gotten it copyrighted, you know, my daughter just got something copyrighted that was an idea. And when she went to tell someone, she thought about it. She's like, I don't think I should share this. Let me go get it copyrighted. Now I share it. So once she did that, she found someone else that kind of used an idea for something she got the copyright on. So legally she was able to go through, right? Because they copyrighted her image and the wording for a company she found. It was copyrighted, but they used something very similar and the wording was very similar to the company that was copyrighted. So she did get them on copyright infringement, which, you know, that happens all the time. But unless you're able to go after those people from that perspective, from a legal perspective, you know, that's a challenge. So again, be careful with what you give out. I mean, give just enough to make them hungry for more. I think that's really what the key is. Never give, especially you'll know if you trust that person or not. Yeah, that's really key, right? There's folks that I've given folks enough information so they can hang themselves, and it wasn't the right information because I knew what they were going to do with it. And I'm sure we've all encountered those people as well. Unfortunately, that's just how people are. They always want to take credit for something that they didn't do.
That was the last question in the chat. Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to unmute or add them into the chat.
Great, thank you.
Well, I do have a question before you move on. How do we get in contact with you after this if we need some more tips?
Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. Megan gets me almost every other day there. I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. You know, I've been on LinkedIn forever. I think I'm a lion and I was something else, but I truly believe it's a great platform to connect, to, you know, celebrate everyone's successes. I just truly believe that. I always send birthdays out, it comes back and it says, is somebody celebrating a birthday? Literally, every time I see one, I tell someone happy birthday, because I don't know what's going on with them. Maybe they were having a bad day and they see that happy birthday from me, they feel better, or they get a promotion. I celebrate them. I mean, it's just a click or two. So just know if you connect with me, you've got anything out there worth celebrating, I'm going to celebrate with you. So I'm on LinkedIn, Debbie Young. You should be able to find me there. Or Megan, if you want to send out my contact information on LinkedIn, if you want to send a link to it, by all means, feel free. I would gladly accept you all.
Yeah, I will include a link to Debbie's LinkedIn in the follow-up email after the event with the Slack form as well.
Great.
It looks like you may need to also know her email address to send her an invite. Just FYI.
Is there a specific
Great.
email you want me to include?
I think you have all my information, Megan.
Oh, I think I do. You're right.
Yep. I say you have everything. You're my yellow pages. You've got it all. Yeah, again, thank you guys for this evening. This is, conflict resolution is a challenge to us all, right? We want to be better. We don't want to be bitter. We want to address things up front. We don't want to let them simmer. And most important, we want to protect ourselves, right? Emotionally. This is a challenging time. We're in quarantine. We're away from a lot of our loved ones. Tempers can flare. You can feel isolated. When someone comes at you on Zoom or video or audio or, via cell phone, whether it's at work or personally, we tend to come on to be a different person. Again, just think about what you're going to say before you say it. Think about what you're going to type before you type it. Think about what you're going to say before you text, because you can't undo that conversation. You can't undo the emotion that's going to show on your face. Just step back, take a deep breath and say, okay, all right, now I'm ready to address this. Now I'm ready to, have that conversation. That will help you. And if it doesn't feel good to you, it's probably not right for you. That's the most important thing I can say. If it does not feel good to you, it's not right for you. It never gets better. If the initial meeting or confrontation or setting is challenging, it's debilitating, it makes you feel inferior, it's probably not the right thing for you. And you have to decide, is it worth it? Is it worth continuing on down that pathway? Back when I was in college, a gazillion years ago, I was the only female working at this ice cream place called Haagen-Dazs. I don't know if you ever heard of that one before, but it was in Georgetown. I lived in Washington, D.C. And at the end of the day, we all had chores. And they said, well, Debbie will mop the floor. Now, I'm the only girl. Like, why is the girl mopping the floor, right? It's like 5 guys in here and me. So I could see maybe the windows or something. I said, okay, I'm going to mop the floor one day, right? So I figured we'd all change. Every day they wanted me to mop the floor. On day 3, I said, I'll mop it after my break. I never came back because the expectation was Debbie is the floor mopper. No, Debbie is a team player, but I've already told you I don't want to do the same thing every day. I want us to be able to be a great team. But if someone already has expectations of you and you're not in agreement with them, only you can change that. So think about those things. If you're confronted with anything that makes you feel different, it makes your blood pressure rise, or as someone says, your blood boil, or it just makes you feel uncomfortable. You might get clammy or cold, or you might get rigid because it's like, oh, this is not feeling good. You got to step away from that. That's unhealthy. And conflict in many cases can be very unhealthy, but you can make it healthy if you address it, or even if you want to address it. Again, it could be, I'm done. I can't, this doesn't work for me. My situation with my micromanager, it didn't work for me, until I almost walked home down a freeway. That could have been disastrous for me, right? So again, think about things that make you feel uneasy and don't feel good. And then, do they belong in your life? Can you address them head on, and hopefully that behavior will change? And if someone calls you out or does something in front of other folks that humiliates you or makes you feel less than good, then again, if you can't address that head on, that behavior will repeat itself over and over and over again. So with that, hopefully I've given you some good nuggets to make, you know, conflict resolution something that you're not afraid to take on, to challenge, and hopefully there'll be a good outcome for everybody here as a result. So thank you all. I really appreciate you this evening.
Women Who Code primarily
works with.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, thanks everyone for joining. And we will be sending out the follow-up email in just a few minutes with information for Slack and to get connected with Debbie, and as well as the global YouTube channel in case you're interested in rewatching. Have a great night. Thank you, Debbie.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks, Debbie.
Bye-bye. Be safe,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.